There's an ancient rhythm, older than time itself, a rhythm of surrender, loss, and rebirth. Every 18 months, Venus, the radiant morning and evening star, slows, pauses, and seemingly begins moving backwards in the sky. This marks the beginning of Venus Retrograde, a powerful cycle of renewal that calls us to turn inward and reassess what truly holds value in our lives. As Venus retraces her steps, she disappears from view, veiled in the sun's light, her time in the underworld, a descent into the unseen realms of our own consciousness. When she enters the underworld, so do we, called to confront what lies beneath the surface. Venus retrograde dissolves illusion, stripping away distractions and forcing us to face what we have long ignored. It asks, are you truly fulfilled? Do your relationships, values, and desires align with your soul? Or have you been living for the gaze of others? This is a time of reckoning, a moment when we must choose between what is comfortable and what is true. The attachments we once clung to fall away, revealing what remains when all else is stripped bare. Venus retrograde is not just about love, it's about truth. It's about standing at the crossroads between the past and the future, between the comfort of illusion and the raw clarity of transformation. It's about surrender, reflection, and the kind of growth that can only come from daring to face what has been hidden in the shadows. This is not always comfortable, but it is necessary. Venus spends only about 40 days in retrograde motion during her 584-day cycle, making it one of the rarest planetary retrogrades, and its impact is profound. It's a cosmic pause, a moment when the usual flow of attraction, connection, and pleasure turns inwards. During this time, old relationships may resurface, unresolved emotions demand attention, and we are called to question what truly fulfills us. This cycle influences everything Venus governs: love, finances, self-worth, creativity, and attraction. It challenges us to step away from external validation and turn inward, reevaluating what is truly meaningful. Venus retrograde reminds us that pleasure without depth is fleeting, and connection without truth is fragile. What do I truly desire? Are my relationships aligned with my soul? Am I living in alignment with my values? Or am I compromising for the sake of appearances? Our rose-colored glasses are removed, revealing what we may have ignored or suppressed. The old patterns resurface, relationships shift, and we are given an opportunity to reassess what our heart truly desires. This is not just about revisiting the past. It's about choosing the future with clarity and intention. Venus retrograde mirrors a story that has been told for thousands of years, etched into the very foundation of human history. This is the story of Inanna, a goddess who descended into the underworld and was reborn. This is a video you can return to every Venus retrograde or anytime you feel the call to reclaim your true power. Let it guide you through the cycle of surrender, reflection, and renewal whenever you need it most. Her journey was first recorded over 4,000 years ago on ancient Sumerian clay tablets, one of the earliest known written records in history. Inscribed in cuneiform, these clay tablets preserve a myth that transcends time, one that speaks to the cycles of transformation, loss, and renewal that we all experience. Before we dive into this ancient myth, I invite you to take a deep breath, get comfortable, and prepare to journey inward. The story I'm about to share is my own interpretation, a modern retelling based on these ancient texts, bringing their wisdom into our present reality. This is not just a story, it's an initiation, a reflection of the cycles we all move through. Let yourself sink into the wisdom of the past and see what it stirs within you. Like the goddess Inanna, she descends, and when she does, so do we. Inanna, queen of heaven and earth, goddess of love, war, and divine sovereignty. She was the radiant morning star, the one who walked between worlds. She ruled the skies, the fertile lands, the sacred temples where her name was spoken in reverence. She was beauty and destruction, creation, chaos, desire, and power woven into one. But now she set her mind on the great below. From the great heaven, she set her mind on the great below. From the great heaven, the goddess set her mind on the great below. From the great heaven, Inanna set her mind on the great below. She abandoned her throne in the heavens. She left behind her temples, her cities, and the places where her name was worshipped. The halls of power, the sacred altars, one by one, she let them go. Before she left, she turned to her most trusted companion, Ninshubur. Ninshubur is Inanna's loyal servant, messenger, and closest confidant in Sumerian mythology. She plays a critical role in the Descent of Inanna by acting as Inanna's lifeline, her connection to the world above. Inanna gave her a command: "If I do not return, mourn for me. Go to the temples, weep at my altars, beat the drum, cry out in the sanctuaries, let the gods know that I, Inanna, Queen of Heaven, have gone to the land of no return. Plead for me before the gods, seek their help to bring me back." But Inanna would not enter the underworld unguarded. She gathered the 7 divine powers, protective talismans of strength and sovereignty. She collected the divine powers and grasped them into her hand. With the good divine powers, she went on her way. Upon her head, she placed the shagura, the crown of heaven and beacon of her divine right, a turban, a ceremonial headdress worn by travelers and leaders alike, a mark of her authority and presence. A sacred wig framed her face, signifying her status as one who walks between realms. She hung small lapis lazuli beads around her neck, each bead a charm of protection infused with the wisdom of the gods. She placed twin egg-shaped beads on her breast, symbols of fertility and renewal, shielding her against the unknown. She covered her body with the pala dress, a robe of divine femininity woven with threads of power and destiny. Upon her eyes, she placed the dark kohl, a veil between what is seen and unseen, a veil of mystery, enhancing both allure and protection. She fastened a jeweled breastplate over her chest, an emblem of strength and divine authority, radiating protection and power. She placed a golden ring on her hand, a mark of celestial favor, a symbol of unity and eternity. And in her grasp, she held the lapis lazuli staff of wisdom and sacred cord of destiny, tools of divine order, the symbols of justice and cosmic balance. Each item a talisman, each adornment a shield, each piece of her garment a whisper of power to guide and guard her descent. And so, adorned and prepared, Inanna stepped forward. The gates of the underworld awaited. The journey had begun. Before her stood the entrance to Ganzer, the great gate of the underworld. She did not hesitate. She pounded against the heavy doors and called out, "Open the gates for me, Neti. Open them, for I, Inanna, Queen of Heaven, demand entry." From the shadows, Neti, the gatekeeper of the underworld, emerged. He regarded her with careful eyes and spoke. "Who are you to come to the land of no return? Why would you leave behind the world of the living? No one enters these gates unchanged." Inanna lifted her chin. "I come to pay respects for the funeral rites of Ereshkigal's husband." Neti hesitated, then turned to take the message to his queen. Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld, listened. Ereshkigal is the queen of the underworld in Sumerian mythology and Inanna's sister. She is a powerful, shadowy counterpart to Inanna, the ruler of the dead, in contrast to Inanna, who governs love, fertility, and life. While Inanna is radiant and associated with Venus, Ereshkigal is the dark force that governs the unseen realm of the dead. Her lips curled, neither smile nor sneer, but something deep, unreadable. A whisper escaped her lips. "If she wishes to enter, let her be stripped of her power. Let her pass through the 7 gates, one by one, and at each let her leave something behind." And so, the great gates of the underworld creaked open, and Inanna stepped inside. At the first gate, her shagura, the crown of heaven, was taken from her head. "What is this?" she asked. "Be silent, Inanna," came the answer. "The ways of the underworld are perfect. They must not be questioned." At the second gate, the lapis lazuli beads were removed from her neck. At the third, the twin beads from her chest. At the fourth, Her robe was stripped from her shoulders. At the 5th, the golden ring was pulled from her hand. At the 6th, the measuring rod and line taken from her grasp. At the 7th, the jeweled breastplate removed from her body. Now she stood bare, stripped of her titles, her adornments, her power. She was no longer a goddess. She was nothing. She was brought before Ereshkigal. The queen of the underworld did not smile. She did not welcome her sister. She only looked at her. And in that look, Inanna was undone. The judges of the underworld passed their verdict. Ereshkigal, with the weight of the underworld pressing upon her, spoke the sentence, a decree that could not be undone, a final judgment from the depths of the unseen realm. Inanna was struck down, her body reduced to a lifeless corpse. She was hung on a hook, left to rot in the land of the dead. 3 days and 3 nights passed. The world above her began to wither. Crops ceased to grow. Rituals went silent. The people mourned without knowing why. Faithful Ninshubur did as she was commanded. Ninshubur turned to the most powerful gods in Sumerian mythology, pleading for Inanna's return. She went to Enlil, the supreme sky god and ruler of the cosmos. He controlled the winds, storms, and the fate of the kings, but Enlil refused. She has chosen this path. The laws of the underworld cannot be undone. She went to Nanna, the moon god, wise and timeless, Inanna's own father, but he turned away. Even I cannot alter the will of the underworld. Finally, she went to Enki, the god of wisdom, water, and magic, a trickster, a creator, a solver of problems, and Enki, the wise one, listened. Unlike Enlil and Nanna, Enki did not reject Ninshubur's plea. Instead, he devised a clever way to bring Inanna back without defying the laws of death. From the dirt beneath his fingernails, he created 2 tiny beings, shadow-like, unseen, unheard. Go to the underworld, he instructed them. Do not demand, do not plead. Instead, listen. When Ereshkigal moans, moan with her. When she cries, cry with her. Show her you understand. And so they did. Ereshkigal sat in darkness, her body heavy with grief, her lips trembling with unspoken sorrow. She groaned, and the tiny beings groaned with her. She wept, and they wept with her. For the first time, her suffering was not met with silence or fear, but with understanding. Moved by their presence, Ereshkigal lifted her head and spoke. Who are you? You have shown me kindness when none have dared. I will grant you a gift, whatever you desire. The tiny beings whispered, give us the body that hangs upon the hook. Ereshkigal hesitated, but a law once spoken must be honored. She gave them Inanna's corpse. With great care, they took her lifeless form and anointed her with the food and water of life, sacred elixirs of divine restoration, capable of reviving even the fallen gods. Breath returned, her fingers twitched, her eyes fluttered open, and Inanna, goddess of love, war, and the radiant morning star, rose once more. But the underworld does not release its captives so easily. As Inanna prepared to ascend, the judges of the underworld stepped forward. No one leaves without a substitute. If you wish to return to the living, another must take your place. The price of resurrection had been set. Escorted by demons, Inanna began her ascent, but the underworld's grasp was not easily shaken. The judges had spoken, and now a soul must be claimed in her place. As she emerged from the shadows, she searched for someone to take her place. She found Ninshubur, still mourning, dressed in rags, her face stained with grief, but Inanna could not give her faithful servant to the underworld. She moved on. She found her servants, her attendants, each one grieving her loss, dressed in sorrow. She spared them all. Then she came upon Dumuzi, her husband. Seated upon his throne, dressed in the finest garments, he showed no sign of mourning. No tears had fallen from his eyes, no grief had touched his heart. Rage surged through Inanna. You did not mourn for me, you did not weep. While I was lost in the realm of the dead, you sat upon your throne as if nothing had changed. You will take my place. The demons seized Dumuzi, dragging him towards the underworld, but his sister Inanna wept for him, pleading for mercy. And so, a compromise was struck. For half the year, Dumuzi would dwell in the underworld, and for the other half, Inanna would take his place. And so the cycle was born, the descent and return, the endless rhythm of loss and renewal. Inanna had faced death and returned. She had been stripped of all she was, only to rise once more. She was more than a goddess. She was the morning star, the evening star, the cycle itself. And so she rises, again and again. The journey through the underworld has ended, but its echoes remain, stirring within us. As you emerge from this descent, feel yourself returning, not just to the present moment, but to your own life, carrying the wisdom of Inanna's path. Like the rhythm of Venus, Inanna's journey is a cycle we live through over and over again. Just as she was stripped of all she once was, only to emerge transformed, we too must ask, what have we left behind in the depths? What parts of ourselves have we outgrown? And what awaits us on the other side of this rebirth? This is not just an ancient myth, it's a story written into the cosmos itself. Every 18 months, Venus begins her own descent, retracing her steps in the sky, disappearing from view, mirroring the same passage through surrender, stillness, and renewal. Inanna's descent mirrors the journey of Venus Retrograde, a cosmic cycle of self-reflection, loss, and renewal. Just as Inanna was stripped of her adornments at each gate, Venus Retrograde strips us of illusions, attachments, and outdated desires, forcing us to confront what lies beneath. Venus disappears from the sky, entering her time in the underworld. This is the moment of transformation. Much like Inanna's lifeless body hanging on the hook, it's a period of surrender, stillness, and deep introspection. But Venus does not remain in the darkness. She reemerges, renewed, and with a new cycle ahead. This is the rise from the underworld, the moment when we integrate the lessons learned from our descent. Each Venus retrograde asks us, what must be surrendered? What illusions must die? And what or who will take their place? These cycles shape our personal and collective evolution, much like the repeating cycles of Inanna's descent and return. Like Inanna, we may be forced to confront betrayals, release relationships, or redefine our values. The process is not easy, but it is necessary. Inanna's story is not just an ancient myth. It's a cycle we live over and over again. Venus retrograde, like Inanna's descent, is an initiation. It strips us bare, leaving us to confront the raw truth of our desires, wounds, and attachments. But just as Inanna rose from the underworld, we emerge wiser, transformed, and ready to step into a new cycle. Each time Venus completes her retrograde, she leaves a mark on our lives, weaving a pattern of growth and realization. The lessons of the past resurface, urging us to see them with new eyes. The cycle continues, just as it has for millennia. So, when Venus begins her descent, when life strips away what no longer serves, remember, this is not an end, it's a passage. A rebirth is waiting. Every descent carries the seed of rebirth. Every ending is a threshold, a doorway to something new. You are not the same as before this journey. Something within you has shifted. And just like Inanna, just like Venus, you will rise again. As Venus makes her descent, so do we. But like her, we do not remain in the dark. We rise, reborn, again and again. Whenever Venus makes her descent, you can return here, to this story, to this moment, to yourself. Let it be a guide through every Venus retrograde, and any time you need to call your power back to you. What part of yourself is being stripped away in this Venus retrograde? What are you ready to leave behind? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your reflections. Thank you for following me on this journey. Be sure to follow for more astrological explorations. Until next time, stargazers and truth seekers, may you rise stronger, wiser, and more aligned with your truth.